right. We are back and with another ridiculous reason for being online today. Not the reason I'd like to be here, but as I'm sure everybody knows now, we have yet another, fix this camera here, another left-wing radical shooter. What a surprise. What a surprise. I guess let's get into this. This is really frustrating that we have to talk about this again. But the truth is, this isn't going to stop until justice is enforced. And it's either going to be by the federal government finally stepping up and doing their job and protecting their citizens, or it's going to be the right wing defending themselves in an equally strenuous matter, let's just say. So, conservative groups that I'm seeing online are now calling this Bloody September, because bloody it has been. September 3rd, you had the Catholic school shooter. I think this was in Minneapolis. It was a trans dude decided to open up and shoot a bunch of kids at a mass at a Catholic elementary school. They killed 3 children and others were injured. And then you had September 10th, obviously, Charlie Kirk. A big deal. They were all big deals, but this one shocked the nation, reverberated around the world. And again, another radical leftist, Tyler Robinson, 22 years aged. And this guy was steeped in Antifa rhetoric, human debris and human garbage. And then you have September 23rd, 24th, you had the wedding shooter. This was in New Hampshire. Some idiot going in screaming "Free Palestine" at a wedding, killing somebody. And he had anti-ice bullets, from what I understand. And then finally, we have Joshua Jahn. This is the a-hole, the piece of garbage, the cockroach, who, in apparent attempt to take out ICE agents, missed and killed some of the illegal aliens that they were holding in the vehicle. This stuff just keeps happening. By the way, Joshua Jahn, and I'll see if we can't pull it up while we're doing the stream here, but his Facebook page, which they tried to delete, but people screenshotted it, showed Communist Manifesto, Antifa rhetoric. I mean, this is just par for the course. This stuff just keeps happening. This is a never-ending surge in left-wing violence that has been ongoing now for 15 years. It's just, we've reached a point of no return. The left has been trying to intensify the hatred, and I'm specifically talking about the media and the politicians. And I would say that maybe in the beginning it was all about trying to get their base ginned up to go out and vote. But they had to have known that this was going to end in violence. We have been headed in this direction for 15 freaking years. Ever since the hands up don't shoot fiasco, well, guess what? That's when the police started backing off because racism, and everyone got scared to do their job to stop riots. And so here we go. The trend was set and it never got undone. 15 years later, you have emboldened wacko weirdos who are intent on killing right-wingers because they disagree with us politically, and they are losing the battle on the political stage, and they can't handle it. And I think the added fear of potential mass deportation, which I think is still on the docket, I think this is what's driving them over the cliff. Because you're talking about 25 to 30 million, maybe more, certainly not less, non-citizens infesting the country who have no right to be here. The idea was to get them citizenship at some point and then, generational control, permanent power. Well, that's gone. And if you get mass deportation done, that shatters the leftist dream of holding on to power. And the American public at large, I think, is beginning to reject left-wing radicalism, left-wing ideology in its modern form. Old Democrat Party, the old Clinton era, yeah, that was fine. It was the era of big government versus small government, which was the better way to go. Well, that day is dead and gone. And you know what's crazy? and we'll get to the details here. I'm sure you guys are already aware of a lot of this stuff, so we'll still go over this article about the New York Post. But before I do, see if I have this here. Yeah, here we go. This idiot. You guys all remember Hillary Rodham Clinton, the wife of the cheater-in-chief, Bill Bubba Clinton. I did not have sex with that woman, not a single time. I never asked anyone to lie. Well, she had some thoughts about you, the people on the right, the white people, the Christians. This was on Morning Joe, just 2 weeks after Charlie Kirk was killed.
Oh, special as a country. And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view.
I wonder what that could be.
Certain ideology. It's just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the...
And what would that be, Miss Hillary Clinton?
The path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, bumps along the way, but I agree with you. We were on the right trajectory.
Were we, though? I don't think so. By the way, in case I didn't say hello to everybody in the audience, thank you for joining me. These are obviously, we're doing a new style live stream here, and I think I have most things set up with this whole live stream stuff now, and I have finally set up properly where super chats will show up on screen. Just all this stuff. Then I will try to read the comments as we go along. Speaking of which, Zero Factor says people always want to blame drugs, porn, video games, etc. for creating these shooters, as those the killers have no personal agency and couldn't make the choice for themselves. Right. Well, and those are ways to distract from the real cause of political violence, which is left-wing radicalism. It's easier to blame video games and violent movies and that sort of stuff rather than look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? So let's go back to this gunman. This is from the New York Post. Joshua Jahn, this is the a-hole killer, ID'd as anti-ICE gunman who opened fire on Dallas facility, killing one illegal alien, but they call him a migrant. Certainly not a migrant. The anti-ICE gunman, they write, who killed one migrant and wounded two others in Dallas Wednesday, is a former Boy Scout who was busted for weed and whose mother went on fiery rants against Republicans. Shock and surprise. The words anti-ICE were scrawled on a stripper clip of ammo found near the body of Joshua Jahn, who died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds because he didn't want to be exposed and go to trial. So, like many of these cowards and douche nozzles, he offed himself. Authorities discovered the marked ammo and blue Toyota Corolla, believed to be Jan's, with a tattered, printed out a map affixed to the right rear quarter panel, with text above it reading, radioactive fallout from nuclear detonations have passed over these areas more than 2x or 2 times since 1951. Here is a picture of the fancy bullets from the radical left lunatic. There you can see anti-ICE. Now, the image appears to be a map created by researcher Richard Miller, which shows areas of the U.S. over which 2 or more radioactive clouds have crossed, resulting from nuclear testing in Nevada in the 1950s and 1960s. He was firing from a rooftop at a bus full of migrants being escorted by federal agents into the immigration facility. The gunman is a registered independent, but he voted Democrat. Which, have you noticed this pattern? A lot of these radical leftists, they go into register as independents as a way to obfuscate and hide who they really are. Probably helps them hide under the radar when they're doing radical, weird things. Anyway, so he voted for a Democrat in the primary back in 2020 and last cast a ballot in 2024. He had experience with firearms, his family said, and a 2015 bust for marijuana possession. Jan's brother, Noah, branded his unhinged sibling as unique, saying he didn't care about politics, but knew how to handle a gun, even if he was a lousy shot. Noah said he's not a marksman, that's for sure, adding that their parents owned a rifle. He would not be able to make any shots like that. The gun used appeared to be an antique bolt-action 8mm high-powered rifle, not unlike the weapon used to kill Charlie Kirk in Utah earlier this month. While the killer's political motives remain under investigation, his mother, Sharon, posted a series of anti-gun rants on Facebook, blasting Texas Republican lawmakers who supported the Second Amendment. Because far be it from people to protect themselves from violent killers and protect themselves from a potential Orwellian dictatorial government. Now, in resurfaced Facebook posts from May 2022, the irate mom ripped into Texas Governor Greg Abbott and GOP Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, accusing them of chasing power and money while children and adults died in school shootings. Governor Abbott, Senator Cornyn, and Senator Cruz, how does it make you feel that your action to open up gun laws is responsible for the killing of 21 or more people? The shooter's mother wrote in May of 2025, or in 25 and 2022. Which, of course, now we have to ask the mother, how does it feel to raise a radical lunatic child who ends up killing people? Sorry, I'm not feeling very sympathetic today. Let's see. Now, she continued with her lunatic post, saying, "Do you secretly sit in front of a TV and smile a demented smile? Jeez, man, this woman's insane. You must be proud of all that money that sits in your bank accounts from the gun lobby support. Was it worth it, Governor Abbott? How about you senators?" she continued, calling Cornyn a spineless coward. Later that day, she called out Abbott once more, questioning if he's proud of his NRA rating, and 2 days later posted lyrics from, Jacques Brel's 1956 song, "If We Only Have Love." Okay. If we only have love, we can melt guns and give the new world to our daughters and sons. Wow. That Jahn wrote that. Holy crap. Yeah. It is believed Jahn was last employed in the renewable energy industry. You know, this stuff writes itself. The renewable energy industry. Garbage left-wing tech industry. That's... Man. Okay. The sniper also briefly worked at Solar Time USA in Richardson, Texas about a decade ago, and his former employee confirmed. Wednesday's vicious shooting, which also left 2 detainees critically injured, is being investigated as a targeted attack. Let's just call it what it is. Political terrorism, left-wing violence, run amok. Special Agent Joe Rothrock said, "I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence." God, they really are going all out to be so PC about this. He said, "It is unfortunately just the latest example we've seen of targeted violence." No, left-wing radical lunatic violence. Get it right, people. To include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack against an immigration center in Alvarado. Wednesday's attack is the third to target ICE, or U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents, since July, coming as rhetoric from Democrat politicians against the agencies has ratcheted up, and Ted Cruz said this must stop after the shooting. He said politicians demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families needs to stop. This has very real consequences. Your political opponents are not Nazis. But of course, you can't explain that to a lunatic fringe leftist who can't tell his ass from his face. These people are just insane. If Donald Trump came out today and said, you know, breathing air is a necessary thing to do to live. You must breathe air, Americans. Please do it. I think you would see a lot of idiots go on TikTok and do a hold your breath as long as you can challenge and try to pass out while holding their breath, to stick it to TDS, to stick it to Trump derangement, to Orange Man bad, to Nazi. This stuff just never seems to end, and it's really, really pissing me off. And the idea that we need to tone down the political rhetoric. No, we need to tone down left-wing radical lunaticism. This stuff needs to stop. The left is raving mad. The left is sick in the head. Not everyone, but a huge percentage of them. And their hatred has been boiling over in ever greater numbers as time goes on. And at the core of this is their masters, the left-wing media, the political commentators on content creators on social media, whether it be YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, who have been calling for violence, like Hassan. And then, of course, there are the politicians. All of these a-holes have been pushing their mentally ill, their diseased constituents, those that are on the fringes, into unspeakable violence for a very long time now, and there needs to be a price to pay for this. You can't have years and years of never-ending hatred, never-ending fear-mongering by the media, by the politicians, by the content creators who support the hatred and fear-mongering, and expect that nothing's going to happen. My friends, we are nearing a point of no return. Either the government is going to do something about this, dramatically clamp down on these lunatics, and Trump made a step in the right direction with labeling Antifa as a terrorist organization, because let's be honest, BLM, Black Lives Matters, and Antifa have not only been hate groups, but they've also been terrorist groups this entire time. And opening that door allows the federal government a lot more tools to go after them. But they're going to have to ramp this stuff up, because at some point, people on the right are going to get tired of being shot at and killed just for having a different political belief, or just believing that a woman does not have a penis. I mean, what the hell are we doing here? Look at J.K. Rowling. Look at maker of Harry Potter, beloved by the left, fan of the gays. Didn't believe in trans, now they want her dead. They want her doxxed. They want her yeeted off the internet. I mean, how long are we going to sit here and say, well, you know, we just got to tone down the rhetoric? It's the point of no return if the government doesn't do something. Justice needs to be meted out on not just the people who follow through with their acts of violence, but by those who inspire them, by those who incite them. You can't just go after those that are doing the murders. Yes, get them executions, screw lifetime jail. That's where this needs to go, because otherwise we're going to head towards a very ugly place. The Charlie Kirk murder was the Rubicon being crossed, I think. They're all terrible. They're all bad. But in his situation, he was such a demure, nice person that it just kind of exposed just how frothing mad and crazy these people really are. Zero Factor says it is also unhelpful to divert the conversation down a rabbit hole of unprovable theories when the truth is plain and right in front of our faces. These people aren't insane, they're just evil. That's right. None of these people are necessarily insane. Well, maybe some of them are, but they're definitely evil as well. So there's going to have to be some fallout here. And my first choice would be a policy and legal crackdown. So, you know, like I said, with Donald Trump and in his designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, good place to start, because you can do IRS probes of these people. You can go after liberal organizations with their tax-exempt statuses and start looking into them, especially groups that are tied to doxing or that, you know, fund riots. You could see RICO charges. The federal government will likely have more expanded surveillance options here. Again, step in the right direction, but I don't think this is going to be enough. And you have there, I saw a poll earlier today that it's now 75% of Americans view political violence as a major problem. Now is the time, if you are the president, if you are running the federal government, to say, okay, let's do something about this. Now, this is an editorial to kind of go along with what we're talking about here, published today by the New York Post. They title it, Democrat Nazi Rhetoric About ICE Has Inspired Tragic Violence. This editorial board seems like their head is on straight for this particular article, so let's see what they have to say. Gavin Newsom, AOC, LaMonica McIver, Brad Lander, and all the other politicians and talking heads who relentlessly villainize ICE didn't tell Joshua Jahn to go up on the roof and start firing away But the nonstop bigoted, hateful, and false rhetoric surely played a role in what looks to be the horrific decisions of troubled young men. And this is why you have to go after people that are directly inciting violence. There's obviously, you got to be careful. You don't want to trample free speech, but you have to find a way to stop these people before they commit their acts of violence, their atrocities. Now, just the night before, Newsom vented to Stephen Colbert's viewers about authoritarian actions by an authoritarian government, thundering that the ICE issue is alarming beyond words. Right, because enforcing the law, kicking criminal aliens, illegal aliens out of the country is authoritarian. No, it's saving the freaking country. You cannot have 30 million people flooding the zone, plus another, what is it, 40 to 50 million people who are here legally on visas. You can't maintain a country with these kinds of numbers of non-citizens who don't have loyalty or allegiance or love for your country living in it. It is a breeding ground for terrorism. You're opening the door for balkanization. Anyway, the New York Post goes on to write that anti-ICE was scrawled on an ammo clip found by Jahn's body. He killed himself after firing dozens of rounds wildly into an ICE facility in residential Dallas neighborhood. His only victims turned out to be 3 detainees that he hit, at least one fatally, when he shot up a blacked-out van, but several agents were in the same vehicle. Despite what lefty doubters may want to believe, he was plainly trying to slaughter ICE personnel. Yeah, there was a bunch of lunatic, rabid leftists on X. I think Bryan Cranston was one of them, saying, well, they're shooting up immigrants. What could that be all about? Well, if they're an ICE facility, there can only be one possibility, really. Unless you're talking about a cartel hit or something. But other than that, it is going to be a left-wing lunatic radical. Because guess what? People on the right, they want ICE to go get these guys and deport them. They're not going to be unhappy about that. That doesn't make any sense. But of course, left-wingers were so desperate to keep the narrative away from left-wing violence, so they were trying to grasp at straws in hopes that it would turn out to be a MAGA-wearing right person, which of course it almost never is. Now, public figures, New York Post goes on to write, who keep chorusing Nazis about some identifiable group are in fact encouraging targeted violence. All of us want to believe we'd fought to prevent Hitler's rise. And remember, you had a big trend a few years ago about see a Nazi, punch a Nazi, as the violent rhetoric kept ramping up. This is decades in the making. But the demonization, he writes, is wildly off base. Unlike some border patrol operations, ICE agents right now are exclusively engaged in intelligence-based, data-driven enforcement targeting known identifiable, quote, bad guys. And let me pause this here. It doesn't matter. I don't care if they're bad guys, meaning they committed additional crimes after coming to the U.S. They're bad guys for breaking into the country in the first place. Full stop. No excuses. I'm sorry. If you tried to break into China or break into Russia, you wouldn't make it across the border alive. But we're too soft-hearted, and we've looked the other way for far too long, and we're paying the price for this. Anyway, he goes on to write that this means going after the 1.5 million people who haven't left the country months after receiving a final order of deportation, meaning they've exhausted all appeals, as well as the roughly 700,000 illegals who have committed or at least been charged with a felony in this country, or in many cases back home, plus working with other agencies hitting trendy Aragua hideouts, businesses with records not just of illegal hiring, but also other crimes, including child labor and so on. By the way, sanctuary restrictions on local law enforcement cooperating with ICE only increases the danger of ICE operations and boosts the odds that innocent illegal migrants will get arrested. But of course, the left doesn't care about that. It's the optics. It's the attempt to stop Orange Man bad, Hitler, Hitler, Hitler. They don't think. They don't care. I think the truth is, most of these people, specifically in leadership, specifically in the social media world or just media in general, who are promoting left-wing radicalism here, they don't actually care about the semi-slaves, the illegal aliens. They're a useful tool for their objectives, whether it be to try and stop the right or whether it be to eventually get mass citizenship. But these people don't care what happens to the illegal aliens. Don't forget, Obama had kids in cages, which is where those pictures came from that they tried to attach to Trump in his first administration. And the left didn't care while Obama was there. It was only after Obama was gone, then it was like, oh, kids in cages? How? What? It's all political theater. You could almost argue that a lot of these people don't seem to have a soul. If they do, it's badly damaged. Now, in jurisdictions that honor ICE requests to detain perps, agents rarely have to pursue anyone in the community. It's an easy, peaceful handoff, meaning straight from the courts right to ICE. But risks rise when they have to knock or knock down doors, and they're far more likely to encounter others here illegally in such incidents, leading to more, quote, collateral arrests. None of these facts penetrate the left liberal media and political echo chambers where everyone's busy repeating, amplifying whatever assertions confirm their biases, again, because I would assert that they just don't care. The left never cared about these people. And so on Wednesday, as details of the Dallas attack slowly surfaced, progressives, leftist radicals, I'll add, kept falsely fact-checking Vice President J.D. Vance and anyone else who treated a gunman firing wildly into an ICE facility as motivated by anti-ICE sentiment. Wow! No, it couldn't possibly be that. It's like when you have, someone yelling, Allahu Akbar, and going and blowing up something. And you have these leftists out there saying, we need to wait until we see all the evidence before we decide what is behind this. Remember in the early days of the war on terror? You couldn't say it. Mostly peaceful. Religion of peace. It's like these people on the left live to gaslight their readers, their viewers. Like, what is wrong with these people? How do you live with yourself? How do you sleep at night? Again, let's go back to maybe broken soul. Anyway, all of this barely a week after the left had fallen for the fiction that Charlie Kirk's killer was a far righty. They didn't fall for the fiction. I mean, maybe some of the goobers online did. But anyone with half a brain immediately knew that was ridiculous and absurd. But the left is so desperate to change the narrative. I mean, if they're willing to lie about what is a woman, about basic biology, I mean, come on. What else are they not going to lie about? Now, rather than try to explain away the truth, why don't Democrats try taking some of their own advice? They railed endlessly that reckless rhetoric was fueling violence, but won't take responsibility for their own radicals. Why don't they stop using dishonest terms like Nazis, fascists, and slave patrols and denounce those who do to prevent the next person who would kill in their name? Because it achieves whatever political end that they have in mind. That's why. And they're only going to be concerned about it if it eventually comes for them, which is why yesterday in my stream on my alt channel, Topical Umbrella, we talked about the Atlantic finally going out there and saying, left-wing violence is now on the rise and surpassing right-wing violence. And they had a bunch of fake statistics, like they were trying to say only a handful of people have died from left-wing's hands over the last 20-plus years, which, again, is nonsense because you had a whole bunch of people died just in the very first wave of BLM riots. So, yeah, so that's where we are as a country right now. And here is the this is the Joshua Jahn dude. These are some of the screenshots, and I'm sure more will pop up here. Here's your little comrade guy holding a gun. Let's see. Nah, they don't have what I'm looking for here. Yeah, I'll have to go for that later. But it's just, it's so frustrating to watch. I don't know about you guys, but I just, I'm left speechless at times because it's so obvious the problem here. And yet the left keeps playing the stupid game of blame everyone else but themselves. What do you do? Now, as a side note, I have to wonder if this will end up being like the left's rising political violence, specifically against ICE. I wonder if it will be the catalyst to initiate mass deportation by the Trump administration. I mean, true mass deportation, because we haven't done that since the 1950s under Dwight D. Eisenhower. Operation Wetback, which deported 3 million non-citizens in 6 months using the military and the National Guard. I wonder if this will, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm wondering if this will end up being, these kinds of attacks will end up being used as a rallying cry to accelerate the deportations and to move it into the next phase, the mass deportation phase, because this seems to be a national security crisis at this point with the left. Okay, Mike decided to start crapping out on me. So I wonder. I mean, we've already seen DHS Secretary Kristi Noem talking about how ICE shootings is proving the urgent need, and I'm paraphrasing here, to remove criminal aliens and secure the borders. So I don't know. I think this could end up being to serve the purpose of helping the federal government take that leap to ramp this up to 11. Because as long as you have this mass infestation of aliens in the country, the left is going to use that as one of their big rallying cries for violence. I don't know if they think that maybe the illegal aliens will join them. I don't know. And this was an attached story I had that I haven't really vetted, but this was from Breitbart, a conservative news outlet, and they were talking about the 8 times Democrats demonize ICE agents for enforcing federal immigration. And with these kinds of news sites, they play the gotcha politics, and because let's be honest, it's a lot more than 8 times. Gunmetal says, isn't the New York Post mostly left-leaning, as in living downtown left? Yes, but I find that the New York Post oftentimes will let a news article slip where you get some interesting points of view. Even if they have a left-wing bent, it's interesting information to bounce off of. Whereas you take an MSNBC or a CNN or a Daily Beast, and it's just nothing but hot garbage that's difficult to use to bounce off for information or content. Yeah, I mean, this is an example of our good old Governor Gavin Newsom.
In LA, do you think ICE is not going to show up around voting and polling booths to chill participation? You know that. The National Guard, you know that. Everybody knows what's at stake, so we have to put a stake in the ground and do things differently. In LA,
yeah, they just, and it's endless garbage.
We are a country of immigrants. That is just a fact. It is who we are. And yet here we are watching families be targeted, watched, hunted, farm workers being chased across
You mean semi-slaves?
fields. These are some of the hardest working people on earth, and they literally feed the nation. Shame on this federal administration for doing this. Shame on them for choosing cruelty.
Shame on you for allowing the situation to get to this place.
For terrifying families, ruining children's lives just to make a political point. Whose interpretation of Christian values is this? What happened to being the...
Yeah, so lots of examples. Again, no surprise. ICE is the Gestapo from Tim Walz. Immigrants are colonists. Yeah, their purpose here, the reason why the left is allowing mass immigration, and I've talked about this at length on the channel before, and I'm sure if any of you guys are regulars here, you've heard me say this, but this goes back to 1986. We had amnesty under the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, the Immigration and Reform and Control Act, with Democrat leader Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan making a deal because you had 2.7 million non-citizens or illegal aliens, if you prefer, in the country, and they were trying to figure out a way to deal with this, so they did a one-time amnesty. And as part of that original bill, they were going to build a wall. The reason why Donald Trump was able to build part of his wall without congressional approval in his first term is because the bill to build the wall had been passed all the way back in 1986, 30 years prior. What ended up happening, though, because the deal was fix the immigration crisis, build a wall so it never happens again. But the Democrat Party defunded the Wall project by the early 90s. And the reason why they did this is because 70% of the illegal aliens who received citizenship voted Democrat. California, where more than half of the illegal aliens resided who got citizenship with the amnesty in 1986, would end up voting Democrat. Because most people that come here illegally, those who are not part of the criminal cartel or etc., but people who are just coming here looking for a better life, they do so because they are of lower social economic class. They don't have the ability to go through legal channels, or they're not willing to. And so people who need government assistance, and that's where they would fall into, tend to vote for the party that gives them the most stuff. Okay? So follow me here. So California had been a purple-red state. It had voted Republican for 30 years in every presidential election, from the 1950s all the way till 1988. But never again. The state now is over 63% Democrat. The Democrat Party saw an opportunity of a lifetime. They had now incentivized illegal immigration, so they kept the borders open. And by 2005, official numbers were around 8 to 11 million in the country, more than triple what had been given amnesty in the 1980s. And now we're sitting at somewhere between 25 and 30 at least. Again, possibly more, certainly not less. They understand the game. It is permanent power with a never-ending revolving door of bringing in illegal aliens. Now, unfortunately, the left is too stupid to realize that they're also sowing the seeds of their own doom by bringing in so many non-citizens. This is how you end up with revolution. All you have to do is look at Rome. They brought in too many people, which ended up causing their borders to engage in uprising. Because what happens when you bring in too many people at once? They balkanize. They don't assimilate to your culture. History is rife with civilizations that have committed self-deletion because they needed new labor. I mean, Li Vong, really? Does the righty feel persecuted? Let's be honest, my friend. If you have the inability to see what's right in front of your face, you know, maybe you should get some coffee. Maybe you should see a therapist. Something. But yeah. So there we go. Times, my friends, are a-changing. But I do think that the federal government is going to have to take a step up here and do something about this. Because if they don't, the right will eventually hit back and things are going to get very, very terrible. We are at the closest, violence-wise, that we've ever been to pre-Civil War era in this country. And if the government can't step up and bring justice and put an end to this lunacy, because the states, the left-wing states, are going to protect their own, they're not going to stop this. So it is up to the federal government, or it is going to be up to the people. And you don't want the people to take matters into their own hands. So, speaking of, by the way, this is a side topic I wasn't going to get into, but I'm just going to touch on this real briefly. I didn't get a chance to fully read this article, but I think with the signs of times changing, this is from Fox. They have an article talking about how the Pentagon is seeking Trump approval for the first U.S. military execution in 60 years. This was the Fort Hood shooter back in 2009 who killed a bunch of troops. He was a soldier himself. And they're looking to execute the SOB. And I think this is one of the ways you deal with these left-wing radicals is very harsh penalties. If you kill someone, then you should be deleted. If you cause riots, if you burn things down, you should spend decades in jail. We need to set a harsh example for all of these a-holes to understand that if you do things like this, if you participate in Antifa, if you participate in political violence, that you will spend a good portion of your life behind bars with no release. Now, this Fox News article, hi kitten. This Fox News article talks about how the Pentagon is preparing to ask President Donald Trump to authorize the execution of Nidal Hasan, the former Army major convicted of carrying out the 2009 mass shooting at Fort Hood in Texas, a senior Department of Defense told the Daily Caller Foundation. If approved, his affiliation, you mean Islamic? Yeah, that's pretty common with these guys. If approved, it would be only the first U.S. military execution in more than 6 decades. Hasan, a former Army psychiatrist, Wow. Okay, I take that back, Lee. Maybe you don't need a psychiatrist. Killed 13 people and wounded 32 others in the attack. Hasan entered Fort Hood's Soldier Readiness Center armed with a semi-automatic pistol and opened fire on fellow service members preparing for deployment. During his subsequent trial, he admitted to the shooting and claimed it was necessary to protect the Islamic Empire from American forces. Religion of peace, don't forget. The Pentagon had categorized the massacre as an act of workplace violence because the Obama administration was covering for Islamic terror as much as they possibly could. Obama was a big friend to the Islamic world and started the trend of going after Israel and undermining them at every turn. And so they argued that it was workplace violence, a decision that drew sharp criticism from lawmakers, victim families, and national security experts. And they argued it obscured the ideological and terrorist motivations behind the attack, which of course it did. And but the whole West was doing this whole gaslighting to their citizens and allowing hundreds of thousands and then eventually millions of these types of people to infest through migration into their country. So all over the West, the UK, and in a very small way here in the US. EU. In 2013, a military jury convicted Hasan and sentenced him to death. He has been held in death row at the U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas ever since. So that was, 12 years ago. He has been held on death row at the U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas ever since. And after years of appeals, Hasan's final legal challenge was rejected in 2025, clearing the way for execution. We need to speed these processes up by at least 100 to 200%. Now, the Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth said, "I am 100% committed to ensuring the death penalty is carried out for Nidal Hasan. The savage terrorist deserves the harshest lawful punishment for his 2009 mass shooting at Fort Hood. The victims and survivors deserve justice without delays." Hasan is one of just 4 prisoners facing the death penalty under military jurisdiction. The Army Secretary has already recommended execution, and the Department of War is advancing the request. Good. So I would take this as an example of I think we're going to see the Trump administration use these tragedies as a way to go after these people, because never forget that this left-wing violence targeted Donald Trump himself. They shot him. They shot at him. They killed his friend, Charlie Kirk. I don't know about you, but if I were in his shoes, you better damn well believe I would be ramping things up. I wouldn't be taking any guff about this. I would be going after these lunatics. So I have pretty high hopes that we might see the federal government finally do something about this. And it started, by the way, with the federal government. Again, hands up, don't shoot riots. This was that whole era of, white people need to be ashamed of ourselves. The rise of Black Lives Matters. We need to, punish the cops. The cops stepped away. They wouldn't stop the looting and the burning of the cities. This is how you ended up with the Chaz zone by the terrorist group Antifa in Portland. The police, both on state and federal level, abdicated their duties to the American people, and this showed the left that they could act out. And so they did, and we've never seen this ramp down since. So I think that's pretty much going to do it for that story. So I may go to if I have time tonight, I might go on the alt channel, the Topical Umbrella, and talk about some of these other stories I have. I kind of don't want to mix and match them here, so I might do that after this. This is my my side channel here, but yeah. So anyway, so that's what's happening in the world of Joshua Jahn, the latest left-wing terrorist killing. So, yeah, stay safe out there, my friends. And we're going to keep an eye on all of this as it continues to develop. So, thanks for joining me today, guys. I really, really appreciate that. And I will see you all in the next video.